Thank you so much for tapping in, turning on, tuning in with I Enchantress, the Reveler, on our revolutionary rise of a high that is happening right now at this beautiful moment in time, right? So let's dive in, because something powerful is happening in our atmosphere, right? It is the summer solstice. The word solstice itself comes from Latin origins, right? Sol meaning sun, and then tied together with sistre. I don't know if I sister, I'm just going to call it sister, right? S-I-S-T-E-R-E, meaning to stand still, right? So the sun stands still, and isn't that interesting? That the most powerful light in our entire solar system reaches its highest expression, right? And instead of continuing to climb, right, it pauses. Nature herself teaches us something humanity often forgets. Growth is not always movement, right? Evolution is not always acceleration, right? But sometimes the most powerful transformation that can occur and happens is when we indulge in that sacred pause, right? So it's the space between what was and what is becoming, right? The inhale before the expression, right? The silence before the sound, the darkness before the creation, right? So for thousands of years, our ancestors understood this relationship with nature. They watched the sky, right? I mean, what else were they doing, right? And they listened to earth. Do you hear that? They're listening, right? And they understood cycles, because before calendars and before clocks and before notifications telling us what time it was, right? Because who am I kidding? Like, where am I without my Google Calendar, right? So, and my alarms. But either way, nature is our original teacher, right? So the sun, the moon, the seasons, the stars, they were reminders that we are not separate from these cycles. We are expressions of them, right? So the summer solstice marks the longest day of the year, right? The peak of light, right? The moment the sun reaches its highest point. But hidden inside the peak of light, right, is the beginning of the return toward darkness, right? Walk on some grass, right? The seeds, right, they grow in darkness, right? The womb creates in darkness, right? The roots, they strengthen underground before the flower ever blooms. Light reveals, right? But darkness develops. And both are required for creation, right? So these are sacred parts of the cycle. So during these next 3 days, right, surrounding the solstice, this sacred standstill, this cosmic pause, right, ask yourself, where have I grown since the beginning of the year? Midpoint, right? Journey through the year, right? What version of myself did I once pray for that I'm now standing inside of, right? And what chapters have reached their sunset? And what sunrise am I preparing to welcome? All right, now let's quickly, right, talk through the elements, right? Because remember, the same elements that exist outside of us exist within us, right? We're not just observing nature, we are nature observing itself, right? So when the sun stands still, what are the elements asking us to witness? Here we go, fire, right? Fire is interesting because the sun itself is fire, right? But this solstice, it's teaching us something different about fire, right? Not the typical fire destroys, right? The fire that illuminates, the sacred flame, right? The torch, the inner knowing, right? So because sometimes we're just so busy trying to become something, we forget to recognize everything we've already became. So fire is asking us, what part of ourselves are we finally ready to see, right? What gift have you been hiding because you were afraid of your own light, right? Because sometimes our fear is not that we are powerless. Sometimes our fear is discovering how powerful we actually freaking are, right? This is the time right now to stop shrinking our flames to make other people comfortable in the dark. You kick rocks, right? So earth, right? What is that energy? Earth speaks differently, right? Earth reminds us that everything real requires roots, right? So we look at nature. A tree does not apologize for the space that it takes. And a mountain does not question if it deserves to exist, right? And a flower does not compare its timing to another flower that's blooming, right? So earth is asking, where are you rushing a process that requires a season? And where are you digging up seeds you just planted because you do not trust that they're growing, right? Because earth teaches patience, because the unseen work is still work, right? Roots grow before anything rises, right? So now we have air, and air is the invisible, right? We cannot see it, but it literally gives us life. Isn't that powerful, right? The thing sustaining us is something we cannot even hold, right? So air reminds us that not everything real can be seen. Ideas, inspiration, consciousness, communication, right? They all begin in the invisible. So air is asking, what thoughts are you creating? What thoughts are creating the atmosphere you live inside, right? Because your mind is also an environment, right? Your beliefs are a climate. So are you creating storms, or are you creating space? Then we got water, right? And water is ancient, right? Water remembers. Water carries movement, right? Water adapts. Water changes form without losing its essence, right? And we are mostly water. So water is asking, what memories are still moving through your internal oceans, right? What emotional currents are guiding your choices without your awareness, right? Because healing is not always removing the water. Sometimes it's learning how to navigate the waves on that surfboard, and you'll be like, okay, that type of thing, right? So the goal was never to feel, right? The goal was learning how to flow in that. Then we have ether, gotta go, right? Ether, the element we forget because it cannot be held too, just like air, right? It's the space between, the silence between sounds, right? The pause between breaths. The moment the sun stands still, ether says, look here, this pause is not empty. The pause is where creation gathers itself before becoming form. This is the space where intuition speaks, where ideas arrive, where the unseen becomes seen. So ether is asking, can you trust the transformation before you have the evidence? Can you believe in the bloom while you are still beneath the soil? Because Because just because nothing appears to be happening, that does not mean that nothing is happening, right? So how do we honor this sacred pause during the solstice days? Remember the Re's? Go check out my other video if you don't know what I mean, right? With the shadowing of Mercury retrograde, right? We return, we reconnect, we remember, we sit with the sun, right? We feel the warmth on our skin and we remember that we are alive, right? We can also journal, right? What this first half of the year has taught you. Not just what happened, but what it has taught you, right? And who you became because of what has happened, right? So move your body, dance, stretch, walk barefoot on earth, right? Create something without needing it to become something. Light a candle as your own symbol of your own inner flame. Release what no longer belongs to the season you are entering. And of course, give gratitude for everything that has grown and is growing, right? Even the lessons disguised as challenges. And most importantly, listen, because silence has and always had something to say. We just live in a world too loud to hear it. So decree with me, right? I am aligned with the cycles of creation. I honor the light that reveals. I honor the darkness that develops. I release what has completed its season. I welcome what is ready to rise. I trust the pause. I trust the process. I trust the becoming. I am not separate from creation. I am a sacred expression of it. And so it is. And that's what I have for you right now. Bye.